Okay. So, good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for joining the feedback session this evening. Thanks for accepting. I realise the invitation came just before Christmas, but we thought it was really important to get some engagement in with you before the end of consultation, which concludes on the 24th of January. We still have a few of our non-StatCon events to deliver. I know that we've seen some of you at some of the events that have already passed, so that's good. But we felt it was good to bring those parishes and wards together that are on the red line boundary, so the draft order limits. So in essence, those areas that are sort of directly impacted or neighbouring where the planned route is going to go. And we've got quite a bit of optionality in this consultation, so we felt it was useful to bring it together to have a bit of a session with our experts and area managers just to run through what that looks like. Next slide, please, Charlie. So a quick introductions and welcome. We've got quite a few people on the call, so if we can just pop to the next slide, it'd be really good for those on this slide to just turn their camera on and introduce themselves. That they will be going over some of the slides a bit later on and sort of talking to you. So I think most of you know me, or hopefully you've met me before. I'm Sarah. I'm the Senior Engagement Manager for the local representative group. So again, nice to see you all. Siobhan, please.
Hi, I'm Siobhan. I'm the DTO Statutory Stakeholder Engagement Manager on the project.
Thanks, Siobhan. And Ryan?
Yeah, Ryan Robertson. I'm the Development Programme Manager leading the Marston Vale Line section for East West Rail.
Toby?
Good evening, everyone. I'm the Area Environment Manager for MVL, working as part of the technical partner for East West Rail.
Thank you. Ben?
Ben Nicholas, East West Rail, leading on the Traffic and Transport.
Ready?
Hi all, Freddie Luff, Engineering Manager for the MVL from the Technical Partner.
Peter?
Hi, Pete Roberts. I'm the Engineering Manager and Lead on the Master Bay Line for East West Rail.
And Jonathan?
Hi, yep, John Wallace, Design Manager supporting Ryan and Peter.
Excellent, thank you. I thought it was a good idea to bring the team together because these are the people that are in the background doing all of the hard work, and I hope you've met some of these at the events, but again, it's really good for you to meet everybody. Nick, you've got your hand up?
Yeah, I appreciate those titles make a lot of sense to you. I suspect they don't make a lot of sense to other people. Could you actually at some point send us a diagram indicating the relationships between them? And the other point is anybody in there actually from Network Rail?
Sorry, can you repeat the first question?
Yeah, my first question was, I appreciate that those titles make a lot of sense to you. I suspect they don't to everybody else. So could you actually send us a diagram at some stage that indicates the relationship between those various people and who actually does what? You know, what does environment mean in this context and that sort of thing? And secondly, is anybody there actually from Network Rail?
Okay, we can certainly look at explaining the job descriptions when we send out the notes from the meeting. We don't have anybody from Network Rail, but we all tend to work with Network Rail in some way or shape on the project. Okay. Can we go back to the agenda slide, please, Charlie? Okay, so we've done the introductions. I'll go through the housekeeping, but it's pretty standard to these meetings. So it's an online meeting. We're going to run through some slides, but please feel free to put your hand up and we will take questions as we go. Or you can put some questions in the chat and we'll get round to those as well. And as I said earlier, by all means, go off camera, on camera, whatever you're more comfortable with. Thank you, Charlie. And back to the agenda. Sorry, back to the agenda slide. So we will do a brief update on the project. Siobhan will give that update and she'll explain what she does on the project and where we are at the moment. There'll be a very brief introduction to the workshops. I use the term workshops quite lightly because this is more of a conversation, if you like, and an update. We're not going to break anybody into rooms and do anything like that, but we do want to hear from you and have some good conversations. But Siobhan will do an update on that. There'll be a brief update from Ryan on the proposals themselves, and that's when we'll get into the weeds a bit of the optionality. And likewise, that will lead into the sort of feedback session, but it really is all one session. And I'd like this to be quite informal, so we just really want to encourage to hear from you really on what you think of the proposals. And there will be Q&A at the end to wrap up, but we will be taking Q&A as we go. I am going to be quite strict with timings here and try and move conversation on if we feel that we are sort of sticking to a point, because I would like everybody on the call to have an opportunity to really talk to us. Thanks, Charlie. I think that's me. Just very quickly, just to kind of set the scene again with this session, this is very much around the optionality that we have gone out with. So we want to hear from you on what is available, what's gone out in the consultation documents, and what we are really looking for feedback on. We will not be revisiting or going over route options or 4 versus 6 track, anything that's sort of not already been decided. Anything that came out in the route update announcement of 2023, we will not be going over on this session. We really want to concentrate on what we have available and really use the time wisely for that. In regards to the feedback, we will be taking away feedback from this session, and it will be logged and going into the design sort of feedback process. However, the best way and the most formal way to capture feedback for this consultation will be through the consultation documents. So either you can do that online, or you can do that with the paper documents that have been shared at events, etc. So although this is a very much feedback session and we will be taking this away, anything that you want captured would need to be done through the appropriate feedback channels. So before I hand over to Siobhan, does anybody have any questions on the format for this evening? Or anything else?
Sorry, Sarah, you're saying that this workshop you will get the general sense of what people are saying, but you won't be capturing individual points of feedback because you expect those to go into the consultation. But presumably on future workshops after the consultation, you will be making a full recording, because otherwise there's not much point in having them.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I said we will take away feedback from tonight, which will be put into our feedback process internally. So we will be taking away feedback, but we still encourage you to complete the feedback forms that are available.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Charlie. I think I'll hand over to Siobhan now.
Thank you. Next slide, please. Right, so we are now in the non-stat consultation for the project, as you know, and it's been a long build up to this point. We've had various consultations and meetings and engagements up until this point. What's really important to note is while it's been a long time coming, we've still got a bit of a way to go in terms of formulating the design. And so it's really important as part of the process that we have engagement with you on design, on the design and your feedback, so that we can really go back and shape the designs for the next round of consultations and ahead of the ultimate DCO submission. All the information about the DCO process can be found on the Planning Inspectorate website, which I will have just popped into the chat. So please feel free to take a look at your leisure and have a real look into the process, the formal process, and the legalities of it, and where you can formally make your representations at different points in the process. So we are still in pre-application stage. There's a little bit way to go, and we really appreciate your feedback as part of the design refinement process. Next slide. So as you know, we're in non-stat consultation. We're more than halfway through the consultation, and we've had some really good attendance at events and on similar sessions like this with other stakeholders. Our online events have been quite popular, and the in-person events have been really good. We've been getting some really great feedback, and we really encourage you to go ahead to an event if you haven't been to one already, because there's a real large variation of the materials, and a real opportunity to speak to more of the team and answer some of your specific questions before you submit your final response. And then at the bottom there is just a list of our last few remaining consultation events. So there's one tomorrow in Comberton, and there's just a few more before we finish up on the 21st of January with our last event ahead of the end of the consultation on the 24th of January. 11:59 p.m. is when the consultation will close. Next slide. So just a little bit about the workshops themselves. We really, as Sarah outlined in the beginning, we really want to put on these workshops as an opportunity for you to speak to us about the design, get your feedback, and really share with us your initial thinking. And it will also help you, if we can answer your questions, to formulate how you respond to the consultation as well, so that your responses can be a bit more informed, rather than just reading them from yourselves. The workshops are interactive. We really are keen to hear from you, and really keen for you to ask questions, and to also give suggestions on the plans. And so we, as Sarah said, we are listening, and we're taking this all in. But because of the DCO process is a very formalized, very legalized process, it's really important that your submissions come from you. It's if we just rely on what comes out of today, then it's really secondhand information, and we want your feedback to come from yourselves, and that there's written documented evidence of that, to put in as part of the process. So please do respond formally, but also share your feedback here, and it will be really helpful for how we proceed with the design. Next slide. And just to say, we are doing sessions like these with other local authorities, and the two most relevant for this section. We've had a session with Milton Keynes on the 18th of December, and we'll be having another session with Central Bedfordshire Council on the 22nd of January, and we will be talking with them, having similar discussions, and looking over the maps and plans, and getting their early feedback ahead of their own consultation responses. And we will be doing further workshops with all of our statutory stakeholders throughout 2025. That's it.
Thanks, Siobhan. And one thing I forgot to mention earlier was that this is the first of a suite of sessions we'll have with you all. This round had to be online due to the fact we're still delivering the non-StatCon events. However, these sessions will be in person for the rest of the year, so I will provide more information on that. Thanks. Next slide, please. Brian.
Yep, so within the non-statutory consultation, we are providing an update on what we're looking to do in the Fenny Stratford-Kempston area. Obviously, the existing service has been going for some time with the existing stopping at the 10 stations along the Marston Vale line, but the works that have been done on the line have been minimal for quite some time, and there have been issues along this line for a few years, and we're looking at what we can do to improve this, to enable us to improve the service both within the Marston Vale line and between Oxford to Cambridge as a whole. Next slide. So to give a summary of the works we're looking to do between Fenny, Stratford and Kempston, so obviously our goal is to introduce more frequent and reliable passenger services to help local communities reach more destinations. And so we're looking at different service concepts for the Marston Vale line, and these are the existing station option, which would retain the existing 9 stations, with Bedford St John's being dealt with separately within the Bedford area. So the 9 stations between Fenny, Stratford and Kempston, Hardwick, those still being retained, with the currently hourly service between Bletchley and Bedford running between that area, calling at all 9 stations, but then in addition having 2 extra services of the Oxford to Cambridge stopping at Woburn Sands, Ridgemont, Didlington and Stewartby. Within the consolidated station option, we are looking at taking these 9 stations, consolidating them to 4 new modern and more easy to access stations at Woburn Sands, Ridgemont, Didlington and Stewartby. We'd be looking at more in terms of what upgrades we could do to provide for these stations, providing more modern facilities that you would expect at stations, including more active travel hubs in terms of access for buses, taxis, cycle hubs, and then the car parking as well, and better access into a station than what some of these stations currently provide. And then also looking at the locations of these stations where they can move so that they can better provide for a wider community than what they can currently do in their existing locations. These 4 stations would be serviced by 3 East West Rail trains. So you would have the Oxford to Cambridge stopping at all 4 stations, and then we'd be looking at the Bletchley to Bedford service combining with one of the, was Bedford to Cambridge, and to create a Bletchley to Cambridge service. So it would be 2 Oxford to Cambridge and 1 Bletchley to Cambridge. At Stewartby, we are also looking at more services using that station due to some of the constraints around Bedford Midland and the station there. So originally there was proposals for services from Bedford to Cambridge, but as we've looked and developed our proposals, we have found that actually pulling that to a Stewartby to Cambridge service better provides for the communities within the Bedford area, and also reduces some of our impacts directly within Bedford, and allows for easier access and more access to Bedford Hospital. We've then also been looking at upgrading the railway infrastructure where needed to allow for our new services. So looking at more targeted infrastructure upgrades along the Marston Vale line so that we can reduce the disruption of what we need to do on this railway, but still do the works we need to get this rail line up to a higher degree of quality than what it currently is. And then we've also looked at the level crossings across the Marston Vale line. So there are 30 level crossings in total between Fenny, Stratford and Kempston, ranging from road crossings to footpath, bridleways, accommodation and farmland user work crossings. With each of those within our consultation, we proposed what we would like to move forward with, keeping crossings open where we can, and if not, including what potential diversions or infrastructure we would need to provide to close that crossing. And then we've also been looking at the passing loops that would be required along the Marston Vale line to allow us to provide for faster trains to overtake slower trains, including freight, along this section of the line. We have a couple of proposed locations in the Ridgemont and Stewartby area, but it's important to us that we confirm what the best service concept is and then the best station locations depending on that service concept before determining the final passing loop location for this section. Right, next slide.
So thank you. So for this slide just outlines some of the key environmental considerations that we've got on the Marston Vale line route. So following on from what Ryan's outlined, the potential impacts that could be to environmental receptors are listed here. So we've particularly been looking at changes to level crossings and stations. So the impact on local residents and local users of those. There obviously will be some landscape and visual impacts around the new stations that we are looking at. There's some 60 residential properties that would be subject to some sort of acquisition, whether that be permanent or temporary use. There's a number of environmental designations straddling the route either side. So there's wet wildlife corridors and a number of county wildlife sites. There's also some flood risk along the route, and we have crossing of the Grand Union Canal and the River Ousel east of Bletchley, and then Broughton Brook alongside the M1 near Ridgemont, and then Elstow Brook once we get up nearer towards Bedford. And then there's a number of protected species in the area. We're aware of otter and water vole records at those above water bodies. There's major Roman settlements along the route, notably in the vicinity of Lidlington, and then also there's a number of listed buildings with 4 of the stations on MVL being listed. Next slide, please. So just our approach to the environment. So the environment team is fully integrated with the engineering team, and it's, you know, we're a fundamental part of the decision-making process for everything that we're doing at the moment, and that's to ensure that we compensate for making a potential for any environmental impacts to deliver a sustainable railway. So we remain committed to the environmental principles that are outlined in the 2021 non-statutory consultation, and since then we've prepared the environmental strategy, which contains 6 environmental sustainability pillars, and each of those pillars has an associated ambition and definition, and details of those are available in the consultation material. And next slide, please. So as part of the non-statutory consultation, environmental update report has been produced. That's available online now. And then as part of the statutory consultation, a preliminary environmental information report will be shared, and then to support the submission of the development consent order, a full environmental statement will be prepared. And then throughout this process, design, development and environmental impact assessment will continue making use of information gathered through surveys and engagement with all types of people to make sure that we have the best scheme environmentally and sustainable. Next one. Yeah, next one.
Yeah, so just say.
Sorry, could I just ask a quick question? You talked about the environmental statement there. Most people on this call will have just had an email from the planning inspectorate with a fairly short deadline and a 1,000-page document to review. Could you actually explain the relationship between what you've just said and that document?
I don't know if that's a question that I've got. So what have you received? Sorry.
The planning inspectorate has to send out a document, and I'm sorry, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head all the details of the names. It's your environmental proposals, effectively. That's not the title of it. And the Secretary of State, through the planning inspectorate, has to give an opinion about whether what you are proposing is sufficiently wide in scope and depth and everything else to answer all the questions. In other words, in short terms, have you done all your homework? That's been sent to parish councils with a deadline at the end of this month.
Okay, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
clear where that fits with what you just talked about.
Yeah, so that's not mentioned on this slide. So as part of the environmental impact assessment process, you have to do it. There's the second stage is the scoping report, and what that scoping report outlines is all different disciplines, whether they're scoped into the environmental assessment or not. That's not part of the consultation, like non-statutory consultation material. It's a separate deliverable, but yes, that I think that got submitted maybe last week to PINS. So yeah, I'm not surprised that you've been asked to provide feedback. So the scoping report will inform the environmental statement as to what topics are included within that environmental statement.
So effectively, everybody's got to answer the same questions twice.
The scoping report is there to make the environmental statement proportionate, to make sure that topics that could never have a significant effect, or very wouldn't have a significant effect, wouldn't therefore be included in the environmental statement. For a project of this scale, most topics will be scoped in because we've got such a large range of topics that potentially could be scoped in.
Okay. So anything that's missing, please shout. Right. Okay, thank you.
Okay, briefly to go over some homes, land, and property. So when developing our designs, we've tried to reduce our potential impacts on land and property owners where possible. Within this area in particular, we are trying to use the existing railway land to build and operate the railway, but inevitably with a project of this size, we do also need to buy and use other land along the route, which can include homes, businesses, and agricultural land. As we develop our proposals, we are seeking to reduce the impact on the land, property owners, and sensitive environmental features and historical landscapes. The proposals we're presenting at this consultation show the extent of land that has been identified at this stage that we potentially need for the railway and for the East West Rail project, and the Secretary of State of Transport has safeguarded land within this area, triggering statutory blight provisions. So for property owners not eligible to serve a blight notice, there is still an ability to apply to us to buy their property under the Need to Sell property scheme. What we do ask is obviously anyone who feels they are affected by this, anyone you know who feels that they may be affected, if they can send any questions to our land and property team. The email address here, land@eastwestrail.co.uk, so that we can direct them to the relevant people and have conversations with them on the effect and what can be done. So moving on to the design feedback session. So obviously the main part of what we were looking to do here today. I suppose if we move on to the next slide, we've looked at presenting, the key areas that we believe are the important aspects within what we're looking to do along the MVL. And I suppose we're looking here, this is to get your feedback on these elements. Obviously, if there are additional things you want to raise, we can discuss through those as well. I think what we'd like to do is, run through these elements so that we can keep all the questions to each section together and, build the conversation on top of itself rather than darting off everywhere. So I think the first section we'd like to look at, discuss is the MVL stations. So for me, really, it's to open the floor to yourselves and, well, like what questions and issues you would like to discuss and raise.
Thanks, Ryan. Philip.
Good evening. I'm from Brickhill Parish Council, and obviously under the consolidated model, we'd lose the station. And thinking about the community benefits, traffic and transport, door-to-door connectivity, it feels rather negative from a village point of view to lose the station. The other side of the railway line for us is different parish council, but they'd be losing the station, which has lots of employment opportunities. There are factories and offices and things the other side. So if we were to keep Brickhill Station, and obviously that's tied in with what is whether or not we lose the level crossing and have a bridge, what would happen to the station? Would we get a fresh station?
I suppose in many ways it is kind of two questions there for ourselves of obviously talking purely into the consolidated because existing Brickhill stays, that if we were to look at keeping the first question is we're looking to keep a Brickhill or a station within that area, the demand for what would be provided at that station, whether it would provide the right levels that we'd be looking for to provide a station there, and then from that we would then be looking at what level of station we would provide. So
okay, so then that kind of I know you want to talk about connectivity a bit later, but that is a concern if we don't keep the station, even if there's a moved Woburn Sand station.
Yep. So in terms of connectivity, part of the works we're undertaking now as we and then taking the feedback from this consultation as we move into, and then moving through into the statutory consultation, we are looking at what we, the active travel routes as we call them, and the connectivity of each station location and how we can get people and what routes can be provided to make journeys into a station easier. So that is work we are currently undertaking. Definitely feedback we're looking to receive within this consultation so that we can feed into that work and come back and present what we're looking in terms of the connectivity of the station into the wider areas.
Okay, that's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Hugh. Hugh Roberts?
I think you're on mute, Hugh.
Thank you. I'm representing the Marston Mortain Parish Council, where the options before us would involve either the maintaining of the Millbrook station, closing that, or the new station at Lidlington. At the moment, you can walk from Marston Mortain to the Millbrook station. You cannot safely walk to the Lidlington existing station. In the new proposal for the new station at Lidlington, will there be a new pavement to enable the residents of Marston Mortain to walk to the new station at Lidlington? And at the new station at Lidlington, where there's a reference in the paperwork to parking, it doesn't actually say how much parking will be provided. In the plans that I can see, will there be more detail about that? And when you talk about interconnectivity, will that cover off existing discussions you're having with the bus companies and the impact East West Rail will have on existing bus routes? Thank you.
Yeah. So the connectivity between Marston Mortain and Lidlington, we're still working on exactly what we'd be looking to provide, or what we'd be helping, say, local councils provide to get the connectivity of, say, the station to there. That would also include within this area looking at what else is being provided within the Marston Valley development, which also would sit between Marston Mortain and the Lidlington station. So there is still work ongoing to understand both these and Marston Road itself, and what can be done to provide better travel between Marston Mortain and a Lidlington station. Sorry, I've forgotten what the last bit you asked was. Sorry, there was a second
what
part.
Conversations you're having with
that was
existing bus companies?
So we are having active discussions with the councils and starting to work with the public transport companies in terms of the active travel. A lot of it is establishing, where we're looking to provide stations and how we can help enable better public transport in the local area. That, as you say, that work is ongoing and will be factored into when we go into statutory consultation as we update our proposals into more detail on this topic.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. Alex, you're next. Oh, I think you're on mute, Alex. We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you, yeah.
Okay. All right. I just wanted. Is this bouncing for everyone? Echoing. Sorry.
It looks like you've joined twice. Have you joined by phone and computer, perhaps? Maybe try. Oh, sorry. Go on,
if you
Ryan.
turn off the sound on your laptop while you ask the question, and then turn it back on and mute yourself, we should not get an echo. No, that's not coming through at all.
Maybe try leaving and come back in. Sometimes that works. We'll let you back in. Maybe give that a go and see if that works for you. Yeah, okay. Well, I'll look out for you and let you back in. Okay, while we're waiting for Alex to come in, does anybody else have any questions on that? Nick?
One of the things I found slightly confusing was you talk about having two options of either keeping 9 stations or closing 9 and building 4 new ones. But you then go very deep in the technical report, it then says you don't actually have necessarily have the funds for doing that, and that it might not be available on day one. Which doesn't sort of, so it's not really an option, is it? Apologies for the background, if you can hear that.
Yeah, I think that sits more within right now. Our proposals at the stations are very high level in terms of what we are looking to provide and the size of these stations. And part of our work that we are looking at is in terms of funding from other areas to where we could provide more facilities at these stations, and that is ongoing work we're looking to do.
So what do you mean by funding from other areas?
So private funding.
Private funding to build a station in Woburn Sands?
In terms of what the ability of what we can provide for that station.
Sorry, this sounds, obviously because it's made the headlines, this sounds a bit like HS2 in Euston, except that Euston is a very attractive development site and Woburn Sands is already a very committed development site.
Okay, it's just raising the fact that there's ongoing work regarding exactly what these stations are and the opportunities for private funding in terms of what we provide there.
But you haven't said that. That's buried deep in the technical documentation. It's not in the handouts. It's not in the main consultation documentation. You're just saying, you've got 2 choices, guys. Tell us which one you want. Not, you've got 2 choices, guys, and we might not be able to do the other one.
That's because the question we're asking within this consultation is the 2 service concepts and people's views and opinions on what these services are. The funding is it's more detailed than at this stage in terms of what we're looking to exactly provide at these locations, which, as anyone can see within our consultation, we're still at very early design stages for these stations, and we're not providing a detail in that regard yet.
Thanks, Ryan. Alex has managed to put a question in the chat, so you can see the chat box.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, so the Bow-Brick Hill Bridge and whether it's independent of option 1 or 2, which I assume you're talking about the station options 1 and 2. Yes, so the option of whether we're going with a bridge or keeping the level crossing open is an independent decision to the stations. It's all to do with the level of usage of the crossing, which already has a high usage where it currently is. So it is work we're undertaking at the moment. We're now moving into more detailed traffic and transport assessments across the whole of the route and looking more at whether we can keep this crossing open or whether we do need to provide for a bridge. So it is a independent question. There will be some factors in terms of the whether a station is used or not, but that will be considered while we make our assessments.
Ryan, could we just clarify Nick's earlier question, because also Alex has sort of commented on that around the funding of the stations. Can we just make sure that we all understand what is being proposed during this consultation?
So we're proposing an existing and consolidated stations. So we are proposing currently 4 stations along the Marston Vale line in a consolidated scenario. We are continuing to, as we continue to work to develop the options, we are also continuing to develop what these stations will look like and what they are, and also looking at seeking opportunities of where private funding could be provided to help provide for these stations and also provide for better facilities for these stations.
And this is, I think, similar for other areas of the route as well. At the moment, we're just very much looking at what is the preferred choices, giving people the opportunity to provide that feedback. And then further along the project, that's when we'll start to look at how external funding can play into that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Alex,
sorry,
1 second, Nick. Alex, if that has answered your question, great. If not, feel free to just add more in that chat, because I realise you can't come on microphone. Nick?
So the point I was going to make is that the difference between this section and the sections here in Bedford is that the stations there is a station. There is not a discussion terribly much, because they're all new stations, about what, one option of 5 stations and one option of 9, or that sort of thing. Whereas in this area, it is very specific. Your preferred option is to do the consolidation route. And the fact that that is not fully funded is, I think, something that you should have made much clearer to everybody in the consultation document. And in particular, what's the number? How much private funding would be needed to finish the stations properly?
Right, I think we've covered this. I mean, this is why we're in consultation, to look at what people's choices are and what their feedback is, and what options they want. We've already sort of covered that we don't know about the funding yet, and there is information available, and it is in the technical report for people to see. And if needed, we can certainly draw that out of the technical report and send that to everybody on this call after the conversation. I think we're going over this point here.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else got any questions on that? Okay, Alex has given a thumbs up, but asked, the challenge is that if the proposed option 2 new stations across the MVL are not guaranteed to be built, then that will change what people choose. Yeah, and again, at the moment, we're just very much looking at the optionality. Is that right, Ryan?
Yes.
There's a hand up. Is that an old hand or a new hand, Hugh?
It's a new hand, actually.
Fabulous.
It follows on from my earlier question. Younger people in Marston Moreton are very excited about the prospect of being able to get on a train at the new station at Lidlington and find a new job in Cambridge. Will it be as easy to go to the other side of the platform and get to Oxford uninterrupted as well? The consultation seems to focus on the prospects that's available going east. At Lidlington would be just as easy to get off the station at Oxford from a younger person's point of view. And I'm talking about teenagers in the first place, but also young professionals. They're very keen on that in Marston Moreton.
Yes, so the new station proposed for Lidlington would have a footbridge between the platforms with right now proposal of footbridge plus lifts to allow for accessibility across between the two platforms. So as you say, from Lidlington, there will be just as easy access to get to Oxford as there is to Cambridge. I think within the document, within East West Rail, obviously a lot of what's looked at, the opportunities at Cambridge are rather large, and I think that's why sometimes the document does read more as what of going towards, but overall, the East West Rail scheme is to provide both for access to Oxford and Cambridge.
Does that answer your question, Hugh? Yeah. Alex has asked, can you give us an idea of the volumes of passengers you would expect in the option 2 stations?
At the moment, no, we can't provide that. There's the ongoing work that's finalising what our expectations for the passenger demands. But again, as we go into the next consultations, that is something we can discuss in more detail.
Okay, I can't see any more hands up, but are there any more questions around the MVL? Oh, Lloyd, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't see it in the plans, but as you all know, we've got Universal potentially coming into Stuartby. I understand that they are not particularly happy with the propositions that have been put forward so far, and asked for better infrastructure, better station. Where is that in your designs and your considerations, please?
So within this consultation, we do not consider the universal proposals within what we're proposing here, because at this moment in time, Universal are an uncommitted project who their impact within that area would greatly skew what we would be proposing there. And if with them not being committed and not actually submitting an application yet, if it does not go forward, our proposals for that area would be as they are now and not what that is. So we are engaging and working with Universal regarding their requirements around their site and the potential impact on the wider rail network. And as that project moves forward, we will work to align with their requirements and needs.
Okay, I'm sorry, I might be misinformed, but I understand that they are talking to central government, and particularly with regards to Stuartby, and they weren't, as I say, particularly pleased with the propositions that were given so far.
They are talking, and they presented details. Was it May last year? Sorry, I think that was around then. And we are continuing to engage and work with them, but like I say, they are, their proposals are still being worked on. They are not a consented scheme yet. We needed to get our scheme, this non-statutory consultation, out so that we could start presenting on our East West Rail scheme. So until we were clear on that, we've had to leave them out of this consultation. And but rest assured that as that moves forward and as clarity on the project is gained, we will continue to work, and any change we will present. If Universal is to move forward, we'll be presenting the proposals in the Stuartby area that would work within what's required there.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, Ryan. Nick?
Level crossings, you've produced quite a lot of detail about the impact on Bicester level crossing, explaining why it's got to be closed as a crossing because it would spend more time closed to road traffic than not because of the number of trains passing it. You've also spent quite a lot of time offering options. I think it's at Hinton at the Cambridge end about level crossings, all bridges and so on, again because of series of the road traffic effects. Could you tell us what the road traffic effects in Woburn Sands are going to be?
So Right, no, I jump
Jess.
in. I jump in here. So, I suppose to give you a bit of context to where we are with traffic and transport, to give you a bit of confidence, what we're proposing in doing is going to be robust and correct. So, at the moment, we're following the Department for Transport's guidance on traffic forecasting, which is TAG, and in effect, what we've done, we've created a route-wide model, which is based on a 2023 year model, which means we've gone out and done a load of data collection across the area. That means we've got a model that replicates what current road conditions are now. And so from there, we now forecast into the future, which is 2034, and then to 2049. And the reason why we do that is because we have to understand what the future conditions of the road network are. So when people think about their network journeys today, they don't necessarily take into consideration the additional delay and congestion that's going to be on the network in 2034. And we have to create a scenario, a with and without east-west rail, so people understand what the future is without east-west rail. So at the moment, what we've done, we've created those models, 2034 without east-west rail intervention in, and we're about to run the models with east-west rail on top, so we can understand where the pinch points are on the network. So we understand where congestion is going to be a problem, where queuing and tailback is going to be. And then from there, we can overlay the potential east-west rail scheme and then understand where traffic may likely reroute. And that will help us inform what we'll do about level crossings and closures and the strategy. So we're about to undertake some detailed modelling of that. And when I say detailed, we've gone from a strategic model, which is across the whole network, to give us the initial sort of starter to tend to understand where the problems are. And then we're going to start developing some more detailed local junction models that are going to start replicating the intricacies and the local knowledge about how those junctions operate. And from there, we'll be able to start to develop mitigation measures, which will be the basis of us going out to start to engage with the highways authorities to get them an understanding of what's going to happen to their roads, and I suppose go out and create a census with them about what are the proposals that they're comfortable with introducing. So that's where we are. And you'll get a lot more detail about the level crossing closures at the statutory consultation that will happen, I suppose, in the next sort of 12-ish plus months, and it'll be there where you'll really start to see the proposals for the level crossings, what the impacts are, and any sort of rerouting or solutions we'll put in place. So that was just a very long way of saying we've created the analytical tools to undertake that appraisal that align with government guidance. We'll have some confidence with how we're forecasting what the potential impacts are.
And if I could just add, sorry, if I could just add to that as well. And what we have to do for all level crossings is run a risk assessment, which looks at all the analysis of particularly barrier downtime, the road in, road out, the sighting, etc., which builds upon what the detail which Ben was talking about. So once you know what the operating model is, the line speed of the infrastructure, the track, but also the road infrastructure, the curvature, the radii, the gradients, the sighting, etc., it builds into a risk model, which we have to run a score of, which then dictates is the level crossing safe or not safe, and what we have to do next steps. Sorry, Nick.
Yeah, sure. Now that all of itself sounds perfectly sensible, other than the fact that it sounds like you're going to run the model in the statutory consultation, which will then tell you that Woburn Sands crossing isn't safe.
No, we're already running models on the level crossings. We run Network Rail run them, and we align to them, throughout this process, Nick. So it's they get run annually, and we run them in between for all scenarios as we speak. What's not clear is some of the other idiosyncrasies around developments and road structures and things like that at the minute.
No, I'm not in any way trying to suggest somebody's doing unsafe at the moment. What I'm getting at is that you just said you haven't yet done the detailed modelling that you then have to do the risk assessment on, which might then tell you there's a problem.
Sorry, Nick. The risk assessments get done as a matter of course anyway, and we're feeding into them and running several scenarios on those as we speak as well. Okay. The modelling is done as a add-on, as an extra over, which aligns where we are ended up for end state and temporary states. If that makes sense.
Okay. So when are you going to be able to share the modelling of the effect on the level crossings?
At statutory consultation.
You can't do anything beforehand?
No.
Given that statutory consultation is currently a variable feast, that feels that's a decision not to share information rather than a decision to cooperate
So when we say about cooperation, we'll be discussing though that before we go to statutory consultation, we obviously have to get agreement with the Highways Authority. So East West Rail aren't going to be delivering a highway scheme in isolation. It will be being developed with the local authority, the Highways Authority, and where appropriate, National Highways. So it will be done, and Network Rail. So it'll be done in collaboration with them, and then in effect, when we have an agreement with them, that will be when we go out to statutory consultation. That will be when it'll be shared externally.
Sorry, I understood the value of these workshops was you getting local feedback on problems. If you're going to sit on all the information until we've finished all the workshops, that's not terribly helpful. And if you want a specific example, HS2 were proposing to put a road bridge on a country lane near a village called Great Missenden with a 60-mile-an-hour speed availability on it, on a road that you cannot possibly move more than 30 miles an hour on without ending up in the ditch in about 10 seconds. That's the sort of thing that does go on because people do things from afar without local knowledge. If you want to actually involve us in trying to make this better, then you need to share the information. If you're convinced that you and the Highways Authority are walking on water and have every perfect solution, then I don't see the value in having these sessions.
So the value from these sessions, I suppose, is what you're saying now is about. So it's highlighting your local knowledge about how the current highway network operates. And if you have concerns around shutting a level crossing, or you know that if we did shut a level crossing, that there would be a diversion route that would be sort of unacceptable, you have concerns about where that traffic is going to redivert to, now's the time to shout, to say, actually, if you're thinking of doing this, it's a no. As you can see from, in effect, if you close level crossing, if you keep it open or shut, there are only a certain amount of options we can physically fit within the infrastructure around the network. So without even going into too much detailed design, the sort of solutions are fairly obvious there. So if there's any concerns you have now around which is obvious, shout, because that will help us inform that detailed design that goes forward. It's two-way, that you can help inform the design before it begins, and we're doing as much as we can by doing data collection, capturing traffic movements in the AM, interpeak and PM peaks, undertaking manual classified counts. All of that giving some really good information, forecast into the future, but it's not going to be perfect. And this is what these are for, is for you to challenge now to say, actually, there are local roads that are going to be inappropriate to use, and if you can flag those now, we can discount them as a matter of course in the design early on.
Okay.
Thanks, Ben. And I think that's a great point. And likewise, Nick, feel free to share any of those concerns that you've raised, and we certainly will sort of take them on board, as Ben's just highlighted. There is a question in the chat from Alex. I don't know if you can see that. I'm not sure who this one's for. I think it is for you again, possibly Ben. Can you see that one? Given the lack in Woburn Sands and Bow Brick Hill of other public transport infrastructure currently, buses at all, does EWR have any leverage to ensure other connectivity to ensure passenger numbers are met, or is it all left to local authorities who currently don't prioritise SEMK?
So the discussion around public transport and active travel is an ongoing one. And I suppose to sort of show you where we're coming from and the solution, how it needs to develop, is that East West Rail is in the process of forecasting demand at stations and across the road network, and then within that we'll be forecasting how people egress and exit the station and by what modes. So there's only going to be a certain amount of people that are going to be able to turn up at the station via car, because that will be constrained by car parking spaces or local authority sort of strategy around if they want cars to or from. So there will be a percentage of users that will be turning up at the station, either via walking and cycling and buses, and that demand needs to be serviced, and that will be the starting point where we'll be able to have those discussions with the local authorities and potentially bus operators to say, actually, there is this demand that's going to be turning up at the station, and we can help inform that. But unfortunately, in terms of a bus operator delivering a bus service to a station, it has to be profitable for them, or it has to be subsidised by government. So we can help inform this is the demand, and we're confident that there is going to be a level of demand that needs to be serviced. But in terms of delivering it, it's a joint approach that East West Rail has to deliver an end-to-end service, but there needs to be another operator that helps deliver those buses. So, is there leverage? I'd hope to think so, and it would be within the local authorities and the bus operators, I suppose, best interest to help deliver that. But it's an ongoing discussion, and so we're fairly far off from that at the moment. We're sort of developing that demand, but again, it'll probably be something. There'll be a lot more information at statutory consultation, especially around the active travel and potential bus routes and how they'll be serviced. And I suppose just tying into the bus routes, it isn't just obviously about stations. It's about the connectivity between the stations and new developments, and making sure that we've got bus routes that are serving origins and destinations with a purpose, and making sure that that whole connectivity picture is being accounted for. I don't know if Alex, if that answers your question.
Let's see if there's a thumbs up. I think a thumbs up just went in, so yes, I think for now that looks like a comprehensive answer. I can see a hand up with, is it Peter? Or is it one of the old hands?
I think it might have been me. Sorry, I was trying to answer a question and not butting on Ben. Apologies.
Oh, sorry, it's you, Peter. I didn't realise. Couldn't see you.
Maybe I've tried to release it now.
Oh no, we've got another Peter. We've got Peter Ball on. Peter, was that an old hand or a new hand?
No, it's a new hand. It's Philip. I'm from Bow
Philip.
Brickhill.
Sorry, I couldn't see your name there.
Okay, with Ben, when you were talking about the traffic data, did you mention data from 2023?
Yes. So the reason, So and we're revisiting that. And the reason,
Sorry, in terms of level crossings and things, for much of 23 into 24, we didn't have level crossings closed very often because we had no trains. And I just wondered if that might not skew the figures.
Yeah, so we are revisiting some of the level crossings because of that. We were aware that some of the level of the trains operating weren't, I suppose the train services weren't in play, and so the level crossings weren't operating as such. So we are going out to revisit some of those level crossings as we speak, and that will inform that more detailed modelling around those solutions. So I suppose to give you an idea of the difference between the strategic and the local, the strategic model would work on a level crossing being down for a certain amount of minutes in an hour. So we could say that maybe it's shut for 40 minutes in a 60-minute, just for an example. But when you go into the more detailed one, it gives us a bit more nuance. It can be closed every sort of 5 minutes out of 15, and then we can see how things go. And that's exactly where we're picking up that level crossing data. And we will be, and there has been some that was commissioned in 24, which is the back end of the summer. And there are some more that's going to be commissioned in the beginning of this year. And the reason why it's specific months, they have to be a neutral month. So we can't have months that we collect data where the traffic dives down because of the summer holidays, or it goes up because, again, it's first summer holidays, more people are using a route because they go on holiday that way. So it's a neutral month, and we're sort of constrained by when we can pick things up, and it tends to be between sort of outside of half term, outside of school holidays. So that's about 3/4 of the year that we can pick up that data.
Okay, thank you. That clarifies, Ben. Sorry, I did put something in the chat too. I just wondered around connectivity, trains through, say, Bedford to Oxford, are they going to reverse at Bletchley and go up to Milton Keynes Central, or will people have to change at Bletchley? And how easy will that be? Because the design at Bletchley looks as though people would have to go downstairs. It's kind of reverse footbridge, I suppose. And change platforms and they go along the corridor.
I'm going to have to defer that to one of my rail colleagues.
Ryan, are you there?
Yeah, so our proposals currently don't see the Oxford to Cambridge services go into Milton Keynes Central. So yes, to get from those trains into Milton Keynes Central, you would have to get off at Bletchley and then take a train up from Bletchley to Milton Keynes and change there. I think what you're discussing there is the new platform 7 and 8, which has a instead of a footbridge over, because it's high level, you go underneath the rail track. and cross over onto the other side, and then connect onto a bridge that connects to the other platforms. I suppose just to note, platforms 7 and 8 will also be serviced by the Oxford to Milton Keynes, so you're potentially only looking at transferring one platform over, and the underpass, or whatever we want to call it, does have lifts as well. So in terms of getting between the platforms, there are lifts to take you up and down.
Thank you, Ryan.
Ryan, while you're on, Alex put a question in the chat there. Can you see that?
Yeah, so without a bridge at Bowbrick Hill, it's a huge problem to shut the station at Bowbrick Hill, as the only route across is through Woburn Sands. Currently, HGVs are using residential streets with parking cars on both sides and a 90-degree turn on Faden Avenue. Just to clarify, do you mean a problem to shut the crossing? Because I'm not.
It looks like it, doesn't it?
Yeah. So that's yeah, that's fine. I just wanted to check. So that's why within our proposals we are looking at the two options of keeping the crossing open or providing a bridge at the location just slightly to the east of the level crossing, because our initial work that we've done looking at these crossings, there is a lot of movement over there, and it is a link through Caldecott and then on through the other side to the A5. So yeah, our current proposals is looking at either keeping the crossing open or providing that bridge, and I think a lot of the rest, you know, HGV movements, I think falls a lot into what Ben's already just been raised a lot of. So I don't think there's anything you need to wanted to add on that.
Nick?
Sorry, clicking too many buttons. Two things for you. One, you're concerned that you can't extend the car park at the current Woburn Sands station because you can't compulsorily purchase the car finishing wheels place next door, which seems a bit odd because moving a light engineering organisation is relatively more straightforward than buying 60 properties and evicting them in Bedford. So I was a bit surprised that that's such a constraint, given that also Network Rail already owns quite a lot of land around the station anyway.
In terms of land ownership parcels around Woburn Sands, a lot of it is privately owned. You know, they're local businesses to the area. Along the whole route, we have tried to, you know, minimize the impact on local properties, local businesses, and local villages and towns. So we're trying to reduce any impact that we have within Woburn Sands. The current station is constrained on all sides with businesses and homes, and also green space, and obviously you've got the primary school not too far away as well. So we've looked at where we could provide a space, you know, very in close proximity to the existing station, where while there is commitment to that land is currently farmland, and you know, they're looking to develop houses, and by providing at that location we have more space to provide the facilities we want to provide, and also connect into both the existing village and also into the new SEMK development.
But it seems an odd constraint to quote when you are willing to quote to buy up land that has far greater impact elsewhere.
We are looking to only buy land as we require. This is obviously between Fenny, Stratford and Kempston. I can't talk to reasons for why we need to buy land within the Bedford area. That's not my area.
I'm not challenging, you know, if you need to build a railway in Bedford, you will need to knock down houses. That's, you know, I might not like that argument, but it's one I can understand. I'm just surprised that a light engineering firm, which would be comparatively easy, you know, it's not dependent on the railway, it's not a service to people that they walk to, it's a service that inherently people drive to. So if you moved it a quarter, half a mile in any direction, that's not going to have a huge impact compared to
okay.
say knocking down houses. Okay,
I understand that point as well.
Yeah,
it is still an impact though.
Yeah, and it's fair to say that as Ryan has just sort of highlighted, where we have looked to do that, you know, we will do, and where we can't, at this point in time we can't do that. So I think that's been asked and answered now.
In relation to that is therefore the footbridge for the school, which has been a source of contention in Woburn Sands for years, literally. And given the amount of work you're going to do, it seems a pity not to reconsider providing that footbridge to replace what was a very popular and used foot crossing, particularly as the school is continuing to grow substantially.
Yeah, so our proposals for the Woburn Sands is to the crossing was previously closed before our works with the diversion to Woburn Sands crossing, and we are looking to continue that system and keep the diversion through. Obviously the crossing itself would be very unsafe in the new scenario, but also then the sort of bridges you need to provide for crossing the railway and the school would, again, is a very large infrastructure, not as large as a road bridge, but it is very large. And even with that area, again, you're very constrained by the residential areas that are right next to that, and again, businesses and green space and the school itself.
Is it fair to say, Ryan, that has been looked at previously or considered?
Yes, yeah, it has been looked at.
Thank you. Just wanted to pause temporarily. I think we've done quite a bit on the station optionality and quite a bit on crossings. Of course, if anyone has more questions on that, then we're obviously very willing to discuss that further. But I wondered if it might be worth moving on to the twin tracking. If anybody has any sort of questions or feedback essentially on that. You've got your hand up, Nick, but I'm not sure if that's from a previous question.
I've still got one more to go, but I'm quite happy to talk about if you want to talk about twin tracking, I'll come back a bit.
No, by all means, if you've got another one on crossings, then yeah.
Sure. It's not directly a crossing. You talk about one of the issues around Ridgemont is the A509 overbridge over what will become East West Rail down to the roundabout and onto the junction, onto the 421 and the M1. That overbridge in the morning, and I don't do it late at night, but I suspect in the evening, clogs very badly, which will have an effect on both of either of the Ridgemont station options. And therefore, I just wanted to draw that to your attention.
Okay, thanks. I suppose thanks for that, and I suppose just that sort of cements the need for that local knowledge, but that would be being picked up in our transport modelling. And I suppose it's just worth noting that yes, it's busy now, but it'll be busier in 2034 with all the growth, even without East West Rail. So it's a problem that exists now, and it's a problem that will exist in the future. So what East West Rail will be looking at doing is mitigating against the impacts of East West Rail, and where we can, working with the local authority to, if appropriate and pragmatic, proportionate, mitigate some of the existing issues that may be being faced on the local network. But thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Okay, I think you said you had another question, Nick, and it doesn't look like anybody else has a hand up. So would you like to move on?
That was it. That was the 509. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I thought you had a question about the twin tracking. Okay, great.
No. I was really trying to. So I was merely trying to let other people get a word in edgeways.
Okay, thanks. I can't see any more hands up, but I mean, Ryan, is there anything you wanted to sort of cover on the Fenny Stratford twin tracking, sort of to get people thinking about some things they would like to ask or feedback on?
Yeah, I can give a brief kind of overview. So obviously before in the I think it was up to the 1970s, there was twin tracking between Bletchley and Caldecott, which was removed, and since then we've had a single track on that section of the line. For us to enable the services we want to provide between Oxford and Cambridge, we do need to provide a second track there. We can't do that just on the single track. So we would be looking to use more or less the same alignment that was there before for the additional track. So we'll be looking to install the additional track next to the existing one on the northern side of the railway there. Which would also see us need to do some further works, especially to the bridges and the level crossing in that area. So you have the bridge crossing over Saxon Street. We would need to remove one of those bridges and replace with a twin track bridge. Then when you get to Fenny Stratford level crossing, obviously that's a level crossing for only one track, so we would need to upgrade that with the second track so that it covers both. And then you have the bridge over the canal. That bridge is currently wide enough to allow for both tracks, so we would be looking to use that track, undertake further inspections of that bridge to determine exactly what improvements might need to be made, but then continue to use it. And then over the River Ouse and the A5, they are just single track bridges in that location, so we would look to add a second bridge next to those existing for the additional track. And then as you go towards Bowbrick Hill, that's when it comes back to twin tracking, so we would just connect to the second track there.
Great. All very quiet in the room. Alex, fabulous. Let's see what Alex says. See Alex's question.
So lack of modelling on the traffic and impacts for the options, particularly option 2, will both options be open after this informal consultation? Hard to choose an option without more detail on traffic impact and whether a new station would be built. There will be a concern that if people like option 2 without clarity, they would opt for the status quo of option 1. We are still setting out and working through exactly how we finalise making a decision on terms of our existing and consolidated. We'd be looking at taking the feedback we received from this consultation to help us inform a decision. We haven't made any decision in terms of releasing further information between now and the statutory consultation, but it's work we're continuing to do and determining exactly how we get to a final decision at statutory consultation. So it is something we're working on, and if it's felt there is a need to get more information or provide more feedback, that is something we would look at.
Yeah, okay. I think it might be worth just including that in your feedback when you do submit your feedback, that perhaps there is some difficulty in making a choice based on this information, just so that can be collected for the appropriate channels. Yeah, and as you say, it's obviously connected to the development work with SEMK. Absolutely. Okay. Sorry, I'm selecting a couple of people in the room that are joining us now. I can't see any hands up unless anyone else can. We've covered a bit of active travel already, haven't we? But is there anything more on the public rights of way or anything else that any of the sort of experts tonight would like to cover, or anything you'd like to just sort of brief the room on?
I'll just give an overview of where we are with public right of way and active travel. So public right of ways, we are the full list of public right of ways is published in the TUR, which is the Transport Update Report, which in effect precludes the transport assessment. So we're aware of how many public rights of way there are, and the intention is that if the public right of way needs to be closed during construction or operation, that it will be replaced or it will be or an alternative will be put in place. A lot of those public rights of way, we are proposing on undertaking surveys to ascertain how busy they are, the types of users that are using them, so we have that body of information to help inform design decisions around those public rights of way. Active travel routes, that is a whole work stream within East West Rail. They're currently in discussions with the local authorities around potential active travel solutions that could be put in place at the station. However, that won't really gain much momentum until we can ascertain how much demand is going to be at stations going to and from, and then that in effect will sort of set out the scale of the problem and the amount of intervention that we'll need. And so that whole strategy around active travel is in development, but rest assured that it's all about connectivity and avoiding severance and getting people out of their cars if possible, and creating sort of safe and sustainable corridors to allow people to navigate to stations, and not just to the stations, also on to destinations of if there's any new housing development or employment sites, that we're really connecting that end to end for users. But active travel routes, there'll be a lot more information at a statutory consultation. There is some information that I think it's called door to door at the moment in the non-statutory consultation materials. So if you've got any ideas or any about active travel routes or active travel interventions in your area, now's the time to sort of shout and give your sort of your preference around what you'd like to see. Again, with public rights of way, if there's ones that you know that are incredibly busy, I was out in Bedford at the consultation, and someone said that the running club used one of them, and it happens on a Saturday morning, and 250 people can run down it, and it isn't necessarily Saturday sort of morning at 6 o'clock isn't necessarily a time we'd be monitoring that public right of way. So if there's anything like that you know there's a public right of way where there's potentially a running club that uses, that's real valuable information for us, because that's the last thing we'd want to do is disrupt their activities even a couple of weeks. So now's key for this engagement. So this really is a time out of all of the work streams is to help shape what we can do about travel is now. So if you've got anything, please submit your feedback now. Thanks.
Nick.
The broader point on the active travel, of course, is that the more stations you close, the less active travel you will get. And your document is full of comments about it won't matter, we're going to close Astley Guys because it's only 5 minutes drive to the nearest station, which rather negates the point about any active travel. More broadly, could you say a little bit about what you think the pattern of construction will look like? Because that has quite a lot of impact on rights of way.
Yeah.
So the sort of thing that I'm imagining is that at some stage you're going to have to close, having opened Oxford, Bletchley next year, you're going to have to close it at some stage to put the electrification in. Are you then planning that you will obviously close Bletchley, Bedford at some stage to do the various upgrades, new stations or passing loops and whatever? Are you going to do the electrification at the same time as that work? And then are you going to end up with further knock-ons once you start building beyond Bedford?
So I suppose in answer to the construction logistics, I'll give you a bit more of it. So on traffic and transport and modelling, we actually have we've developed a 2032 sort of proxy year peak transport model, which specifically looks at construction logistics. So we've forecast into the future to understand how busy the roads are going to be. The construction logistics team are just finalising the construction logistics plan, so we can overlay on that model proposed routes. And the way that those routes have been ascertained is we've taken a desktop study using available information around speed limits, weight restrictions, all manner of sort of details around roads to start to map out potential construction logistic routes about how they're going to get how they may travel, and inside that construction logistics strategy will also be about how we can move a sort of waste and goods around the network that avoids using the roads. Where we do have to use the roads, we will be looking at avoiding peak periods. So the AM and PM peaks, HGVs will be encouraged to remove off of that. That will be staged. But in terms of the actual construction of how we're going to deliver the railway, there are plans evolving, but until we get a finalised design, some of the questions that you're asking now can't necessarily be answered, because as we sort of move through this, decisions will be made, and that will affect how the railway is constructed and the timelines. The way that construction logistics plan will be finalised will be at the next statutory consultation, but there is a lot of sort of moving parts to that until we can actually come to a concise sort of decision around how the railway is actually going to be built.
And if I could add to that, Ben and Nick, for your info, we are looking at different scenarios how we renew and upgrade several parts of the infrastructure. For instance, if you build a new stations, you normally build them offline, and then you connect in either in a blockade or rules of the route possessions. Upgrading the track renewals to currently, as I think Ryan alluded to earlier, so it's an aged asset, so we say, but we need to upgrade it so it's more operational, functional, and resilient. So depending on what areas we look at, we've looked at blockade scenarios, rules of the road scenarios, looking at areas, be it West End from Fenny up to Bowbrick Hill sort of areas, central section and eastern section, and various scenarios of those. Because generally, if you're doing rail track renewals, you'll generally want to renew it from a train and use it that top sort of way of renewal, versus other stuff like stations, overhead line, for instance. You'll do the piling offline generally for the OCS, overhead continuing system, and then function enabling works and then commission it in a scenario. So we're not there yet, but once we know which scenarios you go into, i.e. which stations you're stopping at, the signalling system, the power, the track, all fall in line with them. So we have got scenarios and durations of those, but we can't divulge them until we fix an alignment and a scenario of a concept.
So I suppose at a more consumer end of it, is it going to be different for CS than it was for CS1?
I think some of the CS1 areas were brand new builds. So if you look at the core section, it's more of a new railways, shall we say. This area is existing railways getting upgraded and titivated. So for instance, the West End, if we twin track in it, it's slightly different. You're building offline and connecting where possible. So if you work in the highway, rail and infrastructure, you're always looking to reduce the amount of disruption for the public and the stakeholders. So what we try and do is do it on weekends, nights, and Xmas on bank holidays, albeit that sometimes is a challenge as well. So what we generally have two options. We shut the railway and we do it in a blockade, or we do it on rules of route possessions, as we said. So this area here is existing railway infrastructure. So we've looked at it in areas. So we've got two options. We either shut it for a part of time, or we do it in rules of the route. But those options are not clear at the minute because of the station concepts.
No, I understand that, but you're answering my question from the wrong end of the telescope. Okay. I have enough background to understand the sense of what you're saying. Yeah. What I was really getting at is that CS1 caused an awful lot of misery and an awful lot of rework on consumer relations, because it started from the wrong end of the telescope. Because people didn't understand what the impact was on Fred and his muddy lane down the road, rather than how many thousand tons of concrete they needed to get out this week. And the 1,000 tons of concrete matters, and it's still public money, but Fred and his muddy road matters as well. And it's that bit, Bucks County Council had to employ 2 more people just to deal with East-West Rail complaints. That's not a great place to be starting from. And it's even less of a place from everybody on this call does it for fun, with a couple of exceptions. That isn't really what they want to spend their time doing. So it's that fundamental change about involving and understanding the impact on the consumer or the customer or the resident, or whatever you want to call them, that I was trying to scope.
And I think, sorry, Nick, if I didn't allude to that, clearly that is part of what the discussions will be on how we construct the end state. So there'll be dialogue with the various stakeholders, landowners, and different you know, people along the route, which will, you know, some people want it done as a shut and a blockade. Some people will want it done different scenarios. So you're right, and it's when you open, are you going to open on time? Are you going to deliver it on time, and all that good stuff, which needs to be a given as well. So when we say we're going to shut or close or open on entry into service, we need to do that as well. So agree with those sentiments, and what we will try and do is work with yourselves to make sure we're aligned to everybody's or best to the best value of all the stakeholders, if that makes sense.
I think that's a good point you've raised, Nick, because the lessons learned from the Alliance and the concerns and issues that happened in Bucks and Winslow and such, we are taking them away as lessons learned and already, you know, starting early engagement with communities. You're right there. But yeah, you're right. I mean, you know, that learning has been taken away from how sort of Bucks suffered with the construction. So we certainly will be, you know, putting that into the thinking around how we tackle the second stage.
And we'd value any feedback, Nick, on that. You know, me, myself, and others have been in the industry a while, both from a development and construction and entering a service. And you know, where I live currently is right in the middle of HS2, so I see good, bad, and indifferent. Some good work, some indifferent work, should we say? So I can see it from both lenses, hopefully. But as you say, we'll try and work with yourselves and welcome any feedback on, you know, which way we need to go forward, and you know, particularly learning from the lessons of previous, our own issues and elsewhere.
In which case, the most urgent thing is to sort out what is being done by whom over the TWAO. Because as I now understand it, East West Rail are in charge of it, but Network Rail are the prime contractor. So you know, they're obviously both involved, but actually understanding who is doing what, where and when, and what the feedback mechanisms are to influence that would be extremely helpful.
Yeah, and as soon as we have more information on that, we will be sharing that, but clearly we're not looking at that at the moment.
And just on that, Sarah, we are trying to integrate that works, because clearly it works for end state, and it's almost a building block to the end state, and we understand the challenges, the sensitivity, particularly around some of the dialogue in those things as well. So what we're trying to do is act as an integrator and maintaining the comms, if that makes sense, between, you know, the TWAO works, which is the level crossing closures, and the Network Rail works, and then where are we going for our end state.
I'm sorry, you can't just be trying to act as an integrator. You are the integrator.
No, so, all right. So apologies. It was my Welsh language on that one. We are actors as integrator, because I'm actually working as on that as an integrator. So I do know this quite well.
And there is an active working group on that, and likewise there's a communications group on that now. So I think once this consultation concludes, there'll be more information on that piece of work in particular. I'm going to pause again. We seem to have covered most of the things that we wanted, well, that we were suggesting we bring to you, plus quite a bit of sort of outside of the optionality and what's gone out in consultation. Ryan, I just want to bring you back just to say, really, do you feel like you've provided a good sort of overview of the consultation to date?
Yeah, so I think you know, the items we've raised here are the key items we see along the Marston Vale line in particular. I think the stations, level crossings, and active travel. We know that, you know, the Marston Vale it's had a railway line for a long time. There are villages built up around this railway line, which we will have an effect on. We've tried through what we're working to essentially maximize our positives while minimizing our negatives. In any scheme like this, there will be both. You know, there's only so much we can do. We also need to provide. We're in the middle of an Oxford to Cambridge route, which is providing for a lot more. So we're trying to provide for both. I think it's just a continuation of encouraging, you know, highlighting any issues that you see, whether it's from you know, the difference, the station options we're looking at, or whether it's highlighting, as we've been discussing, roads that you think could become problems that you think we need to pay particular interest in. And yeah, just I suppose encouraging, please send in all that feedback to us so that we can get it in and process it into our design and into our proposals.
So just to really note that we do have a few statutory, non-statutory consultation events still to deliver. So for anybody that hasn't been to any events or would like to go to some more, we have a few more coming up. Just we had that on a slide earlier, but I'm just going to read them out to you now. Oh, thank you, Charlie, and better. Yeah, so we've got Comberton this Friday, or tomorrow, in fact, Bletchley on the 15th, the Summerlin Centre on the 17th, we're back in Cambridge on the 18th and the 21st. So by all means, it's slightly out of your area, but you're still very welcome to come to any of those that aren't in your area as such. Is there any more questions on the proposals and what we've covered tonight? This isn't the only time you can obviously reach out to us. You have my details. There's also the contact address. Any consultation sort of questions, we'll go through the contact and we'll get the sort of appropriate responses back to you. I'm hoping you've all had a chance to review the documents. You've seen the website. We've got the documents available there. The feedback forms are available at the events and online, of course. Nick, did you want to add something?
No, sorry, it was.
Sorry, it was flashing. So yes, so as I say, we will be coming back out to you after this consultation concludes. We will be trying to, again, really gauge more feedback and get that real local sort of knowledge from you that will help us continue to evolve the design of the project. I wanted to thank everybody for joining tonight, those working on a project, and of course those in the parishes and wards. You have my details if you would like to contact me about anything else. And just to say thank you and good evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks all.
Thanks all.
Cheers, bye.
Thank you.
Bye.